a minute to kind of describe what we're going to do in the next hour, and then I'll have the panelists introduce themselves. We are very fortunate today because we have a really wonderful group of women leaders here, and you'll find that when you listen to them talk that they have a very wide range of backgrounds. They've done many amazing things in the AI field, but very different kinds of things as well. Between these groups of ladies, there are folks here who have led technical innovations. They've founded companies. They've released products in AI, both in the open source space as well as in the enterprise space. They've run production AI at scale at large companies, and so they have many different perspectives of not just being a woman leader in this field, but also the field itself. And so what we are going to do today in the panel is about an hour long. We'll start out by doing a quick introduction. I'll just ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and I'll introduce myself. And then I have a few questions for the panelists that we will start with, and we'll do that for about half an hour to 35 minutes. And then we will open up the floor for questions. So please feel free to, bring forward any questions that you have, non-technical questions, career questions, technical questions, anything that you'd like. So that's what we're going to do today. So just to first to introduce myself, I'm the moderator. My name is Nisha Talagala. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Pixida AI, and we focus on making AI accessible to people with a very large variety of skill sets, including people with no background in data science or no background in mathematics, and people who also either don't want to do any coding at all or are progressively sort of developing their coding abilities. We do this through a combination of full life cycle automation and aggressive sort of linking of various existing tools, particularly in the cloud space. And so we have a booth outside if you're interested, but really the mission of my company, is to really, kind of bring this ability of using AI and making AI as a core skill set available not just to people with a lot of deep technical knowledge, but really to everybody who wants to apply it in their lives and their careers, and also, in terms of being able to learn about it. So that's what I do. Now I'll just ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. Manasi?
All right. Hi, I'm Manasi. I'm the founder of CEO of another startup. You'll see a lot more women starting companies in tech fields, and hooray for that. My company is called Verda. I just spoke about model versioning. We build infrastructure for ML, including deployment, versioning, monitoring. And my background is I finished my PhD in CS from MIT. That's where I worked on ML systems. I also have experience doing applied modeling, like feed ranking at Twitter and also ad targeting. So I've seen two sides of ML, both applied and infrastructure. And I would say, happy to chat about anything along that front. And for folks who are just getting into the field, I think there is a lot more options now to learn AI than were before. I'm looking forward to having a conversation around that.
Thank you very much.
I am Sadhya Ramu. I am one of the engineering directors at LinkedIn who's focused on site reliability engineering, primarily for big data platforms and AI at LinkedIn. Now, what do I do, right? My team is responsible for making sure that the data, underlying data that's necessary to build AI on top of it, that powers LinkedIn products. LinkedIn products could be the news stream that you see every day, or the job recommendations that comes up, people you may be interested. Pretty much everything on LinkedIn is powered by AI and data, right? I think my team is responsible for the infrastructure and the data availability aspects of it so that the models are relevant and fresh as they are serving member traffic. So that's me. So happy to answer questions towards the end if there are more about LinkedIn.
Thank you. Nanda?
Awesome, thank you. Hi, my name is Nanda Vijayde. I used to work for a startup called Blue Data that just got bought by HP. So now I'm part of a much larger organization. So as far as what I do as part of startup, I was the product manager, chief strategist for our big data and machine learning and deep learning product that we brought to market. So in terms of job responsibilities, it's strategy, board meetings, marketing, sales, whatever it takes. We were just discussing scheduling, they're basically getting a customer, having an ear for what a customer wants and bringing it to life as a product. So my background is more product development.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Yunlu. I feel very nervous sitting here because I'm the only non-woman leader. The only person I can lead for now is myself. So I'm an engineer on Google, working for Google on the TensorFlow team, and we build a framework to deploy machine learning models on device efficiently. So it's kind of connecting the software and hardware world. How do you utilize the computing power on your device and then do whatever fancy computation you want to do in machine learning? And so I will focus more on the learning perspective because of my limited experience. So I hope that's still helpful to some of you. Thank you.
I think that's wonderful.
We love you.
It's great. Great.
Hi, I'm Luyan Fang. I work for Expedia Group as a VP and the head of the AI Labs. In Expedia, we use AI to help enhance our travel support technology. We're one of the largest technology companies, and we're building the travel platform. On one side is the travelers, on the other side it's the suppliers, that including hotels, vacation rentals, and the cars, the flight, everything, and the cruise as well. So my background, I have a PhD in computer science, is about neural networks design. And then I worked as an AI researcher for many years. I worked as a network architect building the production network for AT&T. I worked for Cisco. I worked for Microsoft Cloud, Azure Cloud, large-scale design. I have 7 patents and over 100 publications. And currently at AI Labs, what we're focusing on is production and provide high impact value. So what we do is we build the AI platform. Many of you listened, there are many talks on AI platform. So you build the infrastructure, whether it's Kubernetes or something else, and then you have your machine learning workflow. And you support offline training from data retrieval to data preparation and feature engineering down to the online deployment. So you have a model deployment and monitoring and analysis and so on. And on top of that, our AI labs also working on the state-of-art technology with the NLP, with the image, with the market demand prediction, and search and sort and so on. Various solutions, we have a product deployed, such as chatbot and others. So that's where we are, and we're so excited to share with everybody here.
Thank you very much. So I think as you guys can see, we have a very accomplished, panel here, and they have, done and continue to do lots of very interesting things in the AI field. Now, one thing that the panelists and I were discussing when we were prepping for the panel is the fact that the definition of artificial intelligence itself is extremely varied, and so I thought it would be, and it's just the case, it is varied. So I thought it would be instructive to have everyone kind of describe what they think AI is. What is AI today? So this question is for everybody. We can just go through.
Okay. Great. So I take a fairly practical view of AI. I think most AI out there is machine learning, which is fine. AI is the big umbrella term. Machine learning is part of it. And then deep learning is an even smaller part of it. I think for most organizations out there, AI means there's some data, they're building a model off of it, and then they're using that model to do something interesting. So for me, it's machine learning, and then if you go closer to the BI realm, then you talk about data science, building visualizations, gaining insights. So in terms of complexity, I would say data science, machine learning, and real actual AI.
Got it. Makes sense. Sanjay?
Yeah, for me again, from a personal standpoint, it is like how much AI is influencing the way we do things, right? It could be our phones. When I'm starting to drive from my home, I know that Google is tracking me and telling me, hey, here is your next destination. And I'm like, wow, how did that happen, right? It's just the pattern recognition and automating things that are happening and kind of predicting what is your next move, right? I think that's one way of looking at it. But the aspect of, hey, you know what, the volume of data and the technology that is changing so fast to make this happen across industries is amazing. One thing that excites me is the work that is happening in the field of agriculture. I mean, nothing to do with what I do on a day-to-day basis, but I think it's influencing how farmers are going to be able to start doing farming, right? They're going to be much more making intelligent decisions because they have so much data to influence how they're going to invest in, like, okay, how much water should I be putting, or how much fertilizer, so on and so forth, which means there's going to be more food for the developing countries. And maybe for the developed countries, it's like, okay, you know what, probably the quality of the food and the wastage may be reduced by being more intelligent about it, right? I think there's a whole lot of potential, but I think I'm excited about mostly the agriculture field at this time.
That's really interesting. Nanda?
Yeah, I think to me, because I talk to customers day in, day out, I have to be very, very clear about what is AI for them. And yeah, I definitely get excited about the opportunity. Sometimes when they don't see it, it's like you can see it for the human's sake. But it is really, I mean, in my several roles, as I also have done strategy consulting, where you go talk to the chief data officers, you talk to the CTOs, and they're all about numbers, right? Can I reduce my call volume by X, Y, and Z? Or can I improve my business optimization by such and such a thing? Can I change humans, take humans off and answer questions, using some kind of an NLP or text-to-speech? So it is really about bringing that, yes, if you do these two things, it will result in some number. And that is really what we have to be talking in terms of AI. Honestly, in an enterprise, it's not so much about automated car driving or any of the cool things that can happen. It's more of where can be a business optimization or improvement.
To give a little bit different and personal standing point, I think AI is a new way to burn computing power.
I love it. Yes.
So in the past, we've seen that I came from a hardware background, and we complain about why software engineers keep wanting to do crazy things on hardware. And actually, that's what keeps hardware engineers alive. So people say Moore's law has come to its end, but it's okay. We can build ASIC, which supports powerful AI computation, and so drives us to design all the crazy so-called NPUs that run matrix multiplication basically under the hood very fast. However, that's still a very hard thing to do and very challenging. So that's my point of view of AI.
Cool. Yeah, I think all of you said are right. And from talking about what's AI is not new. It starts from 1943 or something, right? So a lot of times people think AI is such a new thing. She just mentioned about compute power. In the 80s, 90s, AI was very hot again for the third time. It couldn't go very far because of compute power. There's not enough compute power for you to calculate those combinatorial optimization and so on. And there's no big data, thanks to the internet, thanks to compute. So those two powered us the two more legs of the initial one, that's algorithm. 3 legs stand. This time it's taking pretty far and it's keep going. In my mind, AI is just use computer to mimic our human intelligence. It's not quite there yet, but there's a lot of things we can do with it. The recent wave is more emphasized on learning capability. You do rule-based, you soon out of scale, right, to do that. So deep learning so far bring a lot of good advantage for us to do natural language and many other things, even diagnostic system problems. And one thing I mentioned in the my topic in the keynote was travel in the AI first world. We're the travel company, we deal with all the complexity of the travel. What does AI first mean? Means natively designed. in the past, we've gone through each wave in the industry of the revolution. Every time, if you try to use the old tool, add something new, you have improvement, but you don't have dramatic improvement. For AI first means, let's take an example of auto-driving car, right? You can take the existing car, let me put on all the software to be able to auto-drive. It's a great improvement, but a lot of parts doesn't jive because you didn't design for that. If you say, I'm going to design from day one, this is auto-driving, driven by AI. So a lot of companies, one comment I heard from one person during the conference is, our company use AI to drive product direction. That is new.
That is true. That is
Yeah.
very new. That is new.
Yeah, because you can improve, sprinkle a little bit on top of it, look shinier, or you can say something we can rethink about it. What AI can do, deal with the complexity, deal with the multi-dimensional data, and be able to come out fast. That's what human cannot do. So if we rethink the whole thing, many things can be different.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting. That brings up kind of a point that a customer of ours, told me is, in his viewpoint, he feels that data is the new code. So we had a generation where code was the way stuff got done. Like you learned how to code, and the better you could code, the more you could build, and more value you could add. And now we've reached a point where how you can tap into your data, that is really the next phase of value that you add. And if data is the new source of value, then AI is how you tap into that value. So that would be, one thing that you could think about. Awesome. So, so given that we've kind of described a lot of these different aspects of AI, so what got each of you ladies into the AI field? This is also a question
Should we
for
start
everybody.
from that
Sure, we can
side?
start
Yeah.
from that side. Sure, no problem.
For me, it's very simple. My undergraduate's physics. The very last year, I got into the computer course. I said, this is what I want. So I went into computing as a computer science, doing my master, which is the early AI, the rule-based, knowledge-based. Then I did my PhD in neural networks. So that's where I got into AI and did a lot of research work after that with the speech recognition, with image compression, and character recognition. It's all about pattern recognition. And then it goes to the lower wave. I've done a lot of network engineering and so on. So all things can, your life knowledge can come together to help you, knowing how to do things right from a research angle, analytical angle, and the practical deployment angle. And the focus, of AI can do. Keep in mind, we all hear all the companies to make money, but what will help you if you keep focusing, how do I provide better customer experience? That is the key to drive to huge success.
My answer is somehow simpler. I just wanted to do something I have no clue how to do.
Yep.
And AI is a field where validated by a lot of friends who are doing it at the same time, and I can get help from them. That's why I chose to step into this field from kind of hardware perspective, which I can leverage what I learned in the past. Yes.
Yeah, I think for me it's really trying to force your managers to rethink because they become stale, and it's organizational. I don't think it's individual. I think organizations get to the point of where they don't want to change. So it's really, since they were not changing, I had to build prototypes, show it to them, show the value, and say, what if we did this? Simple things like they'd have 20 people sitting and saying AT&T is the same as AT and T is the same as something else. It's all human. So end of the day, AI is being, a machine can do things that a human can do slightly faster or more accurately in a repeated manner, right? Otherwise we get tired of doing the same thing. So at least we can offload the boring work to something. So, some robots. So it was really prototyping and building smaller things. And I kept seeing, as I kept learning, the things under me kept changing. The data was not structured data anymore. The data started becoming streaming. So then I had to go learn Kafka and TIBCO and all that stuff. And then, you learn that, and then you realize the machine learning models are not sufficient anymore. Now you have more deep learning and neural networks and things like that. So to me, it's more organic, having, wanting to do things better and making sure that you actually bring the culture to an organization where somebody has to step up. Yeah.
So for me, I studied computer science back in India, and as part of my first job, I was part of our data team, and I was at Yahoo back then. And all of those companies, I think we are dealing with big data, right? And I think this was around the time of evolution when Hadoop was being formed at Yahoo. And I think that was the great instinct to go there, because I think that was the future, right? Basically, like she said, when we have data, the next best thing is how do we process across petabytes of data and make some meaningful information that could be either used for analytics use cases or build something more meaningful. And I think that was the next generation of AI when I joined LinkedIn. It started off with analytics use cases, which are critical for our business insights and so on and so forth. And I think there was a second arm which was all about how do we make our products a lot more engaging and so on and so forth. So that is about the product space, and I'm responsible for operationalizing the whole thing, right? I was just telling Mansi, at LinkedIn we have hundreds of engineers who are just focusing on ML, right? And this is not even the data infrastructure or ETL team, right? I think we're just working on modeling and figuring out, okay, how do I make advancements in ads? Okay, how do I make advancements in LinkedIn feed, so on and so forth. When you have such a massive scale of engineers working, like making things seamless for them from an infrastructure, data availability, so on and so forth, becomes very challenging. I think that's where I spend my time, and that's how I got into AI.
Cool. So the way I got into AI was a couple of different pieces coming together. So my undergrad was math and CS, and so I enjoyed doing theorems and proofs and so on. And I worked at a software company and was kind of bored out of my mind, so decided to go back to grad school, ended up working in the databases group. So a lot of large-scale data, how do you analyze it, how do you process it? And around the same time, the current deep learning wave was just taking off with AlexNet and a lot of the computer vision stuff. So then decided to pursue some internships there. I'm a tool builder by sort of default, so started looking at what are things we can build in order to help ML scientists or data scientists do their job better. And then ended up doing applied AI as well as building models. And I think that was a great time to pick up these skills because I think they will be essential moving forwards in general.
So I was listening to kind of you ladies talking, and I really remember. So what first got me interested in AI was when I was about 7. There was a TV show whose name I can't remember, and it was about a little girl who was actually a robot. And she lived in a family, and only the family knew that she was a robot. And I looked at it going, that's so cool, I want to build one of those.
Small one.
Maybe that was what it's, I don't even remember what it was called. Yes. And it was a little girl, right? Yes. So anyway, I was like, that's cool, I want to do that, whatever that is. And then, somehow I got distracted along the way, but I studied computer science. I've always loved math. And then I did my PhD in distributed systems. But I did a little bit of AI off and on. I was always fond of it. And then, about 5 years ago, I decided I just want to do this. This is what I enjoy. So that's kind of how I got into it. So, sort of kind of a related kind of question is, I'm sure, you know, as well as everyone in the audience knows that first of all, there's so much to learn about AI. There are so many different kinds. Every day you hear in the news of some fascinating new variant and so forth. There's lots of courses and stuff that you can do. So how did you ladies learn what you need to in AI to do your job, or whatever you needed to learn? So in any order, I'm not going to mandate an order, but how did you learn it for the first time, or how do you keep yourselves up to date? Because the field is still evolving.
Got it. Okay, I'll take a stab at that, and mine is going to be more directed towards students out there. I think there are a lot of great courses while you're an undergrad or a grad student to learn the fundamentals of ML. There's also Coursera and Udacity and a bunch of those. So understanding the fundamentals of just how an ML model works, you can get it from various places. I would say supplementing that with actual hands-on knowledge. Because I was in the systems group, we ended up building a lot of software. So along with the basics or fundamentals of ML and software is the sweet spot that helped me get into the field. Because without the fundamental understanding, you're just trying to do pattern matching on things without knowing what is the basic reason why something works. On the other hand, if you're very mathematical but you cannot turn your algorithms into code, that's not very useful for a business. And so for me, it was a combination of the theory as well as systems that really got me across the line.
No, that's cool. That makes sense. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I think I was just going to say, we see full stack data scientists, right? It is one aspect of it is coming from your modeling or understanding the model point of view. And there is a whole lot of things that has to happen before and after. The pre-processing, the visualization, and your whole expert based, right? Every time you have to take it to a user. To me, what excites me is the evidence-based modeling, where you're actually getting the feedback before you reach the end of. So it is not just about, I don't know how many of you are practicing data scientists. So my suggestion, or at least my experience, is AI is not just for model building. There is an aspect of storytelling, which is really what gets you, or which is really what helps you cross the line. Because you could have a great model if you can't explain it, or if that does not translate to a valuable, something that you can demonstrate to an end user, then it's just a model that's sitting on the shelf.
That's actually a very good point, right? Because the technology is fascinating, but if you don't invest the time to map it to a problem, it just remains fascinating.
It is fascinating. It is ongoing. It's a very iterative process, right? I have had to explain. I have a computer science background, though it looks like all of us have computer science undergrad. I have a computer science grad background. I don't have a PhD. So it is, it's really about every small thing. You are actually talking to a customer, and you have to see them nod. Otherwise, are you actually going in the right direction? Whether it's internal customer or an external customer. I think that's very important to me in getting to actually build a real model.
Anyone else?
I think for AI, it's the same like you solve any other problem, right? The first important thing is understand the business importance, how much impact it's going to bring for business, and how important to remove this pain point for your customers, and then whether you're data science doing models or your data engineers building the machine learning platform, is to understand your actual problem, what you're going after, to deeply understand. You can do the modeling for the chatbot. You need to understand what are the conversations are before you get into the model. So from our experience, our data scientists spend about 70% of time doing those. I call it dirty work. So when I hire somebody, I first ask, okay, I know you're a PhD, you can write papers. Can you code? Can you do the dirty work? The dirty work means deeply understand the case and be able to understand your data, be able to really feature engineer well. Eventually, your algorithm and so on will bring the final good result. So it's all together, and then your customer is happy. The next day, next week, our partner in the business is saying, hey, after we deploy your model, our customer satisfaction jumped 20%. There you go. That's the satisfaction.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah. No, it's actually, you bring up a very good point, which is if you don't understand your problem, the AI will not help you.
That's right.
You cannot expect the AI to understand something you don't understand.
Yes, the intelligence starts here.
Exactly, the intelligence starts there.
Or at least if it's a data-driven AI,
Yeah.
it's like the whole business-driven AI versus data-driven, right? If it is data-driven, at least you need a human to validate.
Yeah. Yes.
So otherwise, it doesn't.
And this is also kind of, I think, a very important point because there's a lot of press, particularly about. So part of this is that the press around AI is very overhyped, and there's always this thing like AI is going to replace humans and this and that. And realistically, people who work in the AI field today, AI would not work at all today without the tremendous effort of very talented humans. So nobody, I don't think anybody who's actually working in the AI space believes that AI is in danger of taking over a human anytime soon on anything that truly matters.
And AI today is just still very problem specific,
Yes.
right? You can see each talk focus on certain problem, you can develop your AI solution, go really well. But if you say, hey, I have one size fits all, where is it?
Exactly.
Not yet.
Exactly, not yet. So awesome. So I think this kind of brings up some of the other areas, such as so you guys have all built various kinds of AI products. What does it take to build a successful AI product? What does that mean?
I can
Yeah.
take a stab at it, right? Again, when I define a product, it's not a customer-facing product, right? I think at LinkedIn, it's again, we are still interfacing with a whole lot of teams that are part of LinkedIn, who are actually using data and AI internally to make their product facing the member base a lot more relevant and effective and bring back engagement, right? For example, careers is a domain, right? And as you guys know, I think the careers is all about jobs, and jobs is constantly changing. Maybe if you go and apply a job today, it's there, but you go back and check after a week. I mean, that has moved on, right? I think it's a very volatile changing space, and obviously a lot of companies actually look at job sites and try to gather the data, either crawling or what have you, right? So part of it is like, how can you scale this when the data is so volatile? Millions of records are changing behind the scenes, right? First thing is, hey, are those processes that build these systems repeatable, right? If I change this set of data set from today to the next set, which is naturally happening because the job market is changing, will I be able to trace the changes in one way or the other, right? So that is one aspect of it. Can we make it simpler to keep track of what is changing from a data standpoint? The other thing is the ease of use, right? It's a lot harder to have documentation or best practices out there. It is actually, can you declare some of these things as you're building products so that there's not a whole lot of ambiguity and everything is out there. Another thing, what she was covering about versioning, right? Okay, yeah, that's key, right? For companies like LinkedIn who have been doing this for decades, a lot of times you don't necessarily need to change the underlying data modeling, right? Because for the most part, it works. Now, when you need to change, when there are new sets of engineers looking at it, have you figured out how do you actually version it and can retrace your steps, so on and so forth. I think there is a bunch of things we need to keep in mind when you know that there's a lot of hands on this area and constantly evolving technologies. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. If anyone else would like to add any perspectives to that question?
I can answer that.
Yeah, please. Please.
I think, in my experience, I've done both projects and the
Right.
products. The mindset is very different.
Mm.
When you're working on projects, like I've worked with some, maybe I can mention, like Edmunds.com, I don't know how many of you know, car companies still give out a PDF. They don't give out their, there's 2-seat car, red color, airbags. They don't give that information in a digital format. So you have to print it out and have a human sit and type it. Or at the best, there is, you can have a PDF. There's something that can read the layout and then parse all the information, pass it through some kind of a NLP to figure out, okay, this means it's a 4-door. This means it's what type of engine. Mm-hmm. So those are, you are working within the boundaries of your customer's constraints. Right? Then that's a project, right? Then everything you do is for them in their facility, and it has a different mindset. And that's very interesting because I've worked as a data scientist at healthcare company where they were providing health insurance for underprivileged or people who come on and off eligibility. How do you actually provide continuity of service for people who fall off eligibility?
Oh, I see.
And and also comorbidity, figuring out what diseases. If you have this disease, there is a likelihood you have to do these things. So projects are very interesting because there is a human element to it. There is, you have to interact with the users. I had to talk to clinicians. I worked on projects where I had to talk to truck drivers because we are doing the best optimization for an optimization problem, and they're like, they gave this look of, you're going to take away my job. I'm like, I can't drive a truck.
And neither can the AI yet.
Neither can the AI, right? So that is, but I think if you're thinking about a product, it's a very different mindset.
This is very good.
You have to think security, you're thinking of the boring stuff. There's a lot of questions which have nothing to do with the core of your product, but it is essential for you to actually deliver in a consistent manner. So
Makes a ton of
Totally agree.
sense.
So I can give a couple of examples. Also, those down-to-earth deployment, right? We deploy an NLU model. Okay, data science provide a model, high accuracy, really good. But the moment you start to deploy, you see, well, the delay may be too long.
Oh.
Then you need to have an engineer go in, re-image, and doing everything to make it work in a very, very low latency, like 50, 60 milliseconds, so to satisfy the requirement, which itself may not be so AI, but that's part of the production important piece. And another example is when you do the design. So one is you need to satisfy customer requirement. One is how do you always balance time to market to deliver and be most scalable and cost sensitive. For example, when you deploy a solution, you got 3 pieces. In the first look, people say, well, I can put this piece in this VPC. We use Amazon Cloud. This VPC and this piece here, this piece here. It's only 10 millisecond delay. It's only a little chart. I said, guys, this one transaction, how many pass? 10 calls. I said, you time everything to 10, right? You time the cost to 10, you time the delay to 10, then you time your risk to 10 because your risk is going through the firewall, the gateway, and so on. Just a small example. So you want to eliminate all of that. Itself is not so AI algorithm, but it's part of a deliver the product with most efficiency, most performing, and the least cost. Another example we do is use say chatbot. We develop the FAQ. People say FAQ is very simple, right? You have a list of questions, list of answers, just map them in a table. Not so, because there's one question can be asked in a million ways. Many ways to ask that, plus typo, plus misspelling and all things. And how do you do that? And in the human way, you have all these answer articles you have to read. You can only read titles. Who's going to read the entire article, figure out? By then the customer's gone already, right? So you do the true AI way. You do the half AI way of saying, well, I put them into a table, automatically answer this. And you do a true AI first way, native AI. Let's throw all that out. Let the neural network deep learning to be able to embedding all the questions. Whatever the form you come, I don't predict. I just take it in and be able to do that. And then decide it's the articles. Not only the title, not only the abstract, the full articles. That let the machine do it. The machine is good in that. And then you pick the top 5 answers with the ranking. So these are the examples in the work. You have the customer in mind. You always chase after excellence.
I'll throw out a quick note. So a bunch of friends and I started an SF Bay Area Agile AI and ML meetup. Our first event was on building AI products in an agile fashion. So if it's of interest, please go check it out. We have a blog on summary of what folks said, very similar to what we're hearing right now. So I won't spend a ton of time. Check it out online.
Yeah, thank you. That's really cool. Yeah, so I think what you guys have pointed out is that there's way more to AI than just building the model, right? In fact, and even though building the model gets a ton of attention, people who build products and actually use it know that that's a small fraction. So with that in mind, let's just simplicity, very superficially associate building a model with the data science role. What are the other roles that are needed in order to make an AI work?
I'll go ahead.
Yes, please.
Building off of the meetup event,
Yes.
which was essentially how do you build AI products. The most important role turned out to be product manager. It doesn't matter if you're using AI or not using AI. If the customer problem isn't solved, it's no
Yes.
use.
Right.
So it turned out that that was the most important role. I think the other one was also software engineering / data engineering, because data is key. And then ML or AI turns out to be a very small piece of that whole.
That's pretty well
Yeah,
done.
makes a ton of
pretty-
sense.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so since sort of this is a women in AI panel, and we have all these accomplished women here, do you guys want to comment on sort of are there any specific challenges to being a woman in this field that you feel like, or other advice that you might give other women who are entering the field? What is the intersection? Is the intersection different from any other computing field? Isaac?
I could take, I think it's not so much, AI is, it's an emerging field, right? So
True.
the requirement of the amount of time and effort you put in it is slightly higher than maybe something that's a little bit more established.
Okay, that's fair.
So
Absolutely.
from that
Yes.
point of view, I don't think it's so much men and women, at least in my experience, maybe different people have different, it's a lifestyle could actually affect. Like sometimes I've worked in companies, for the most part I don't realize I'm a woman until someone points out. It's like we don't, right? We're working, who cares who you are.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Actually.
But sometimes you have to leave at 5:30, and it doesn't just affect women. It affects a young man who probably wants to go to a gym or a date. It affects a family man who wants to go pick up their kids. So I have seen, in some sense, I think some companies have a culture where scheduling meetings at 5:30 in the evening, or having you just go off to a coffee shop or a bar after 6 and you're with your coworkers, business happens. And those things affect. It's not that people don't want to, anyone who doesn't fit in that lifestyle, I think I do see that there can be a challenge.
True.
But I
And
think
that's a generic challenge.
It's
I
a
think.
generic
It's a
challenge.
generic
It's
challenge.
not really so much of a gender issue to me. But I think if companies adopt culture, like Blue Data was fantastic. You met our CEO,
Oh, yes,
where
absolutely.
you could literally, I just had a bad day, you could just sit in his room and cry. And we're all working crazy hours in this field, and he'd be like, shh, breathe, and then you walk out, and then you're talking to the next customer. I think as long as companies have that culture, big or small, personally, I don't know if gender makes a difference.
Makes sense. Anybody else have any other opinion?
Well, opinions are not been lacking here. So
I think this is why we have such a great panel, is we have lots of opinions.
So I went to grad school, as did several people here, and just the percentage of women in grad school compared to men is not 50-50. That's just a fact. And when we think about, hey, why aren't there more women in AI, it's more generally, we need more women in technology, which means we need more women coding, which means we need more women doing CS and math. And throughout that pipeline, I think AI is such a niche field at this point that the percentage of women just seems to keep reducing as you get to more and more sort of segregated pieces, where there are fewer grad students in ML that I know, or there are fewer engineers working on AI who are female. That's because just the intersection keeps getting smaller, and I think the solution, at least that I found so far, is companies need to have proactive programs to help more women explore these emerging fields, and more colleges teaching stuff too.
I think if I may add on top of what the two of them said is, also there's a perception, right? I think infrastructure roles are kind of hard, primarily because, like we just heard, right? I think model training is just one aspect of it, model development, but there is a whole lot of ecosystem that goes with it, and there's a desire to actually sit down and deep dive and keep exploring, right? I think not everybody again thrives in that, right? I mean, it's almost like the role is like a firefighter role, or which keeps changing. It could be sometimes you're partnering with your developer at the design phase, or like there's a production issue that's happening, which is all hands on deck, sometimes late night, so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, data drives business for most of the companies, right, who are tapping into their data. And the longer these things are not working, you are losing money on the floor, right? I think that's where sometimes lifestyle, like she was saying, becomes a factor. There's a whole lot of things that can happen, and whether you are somebody who wants to sit down and like dig deeper and wait till the end results or whatever you're looking after is sought out.
But having said that, just to be for the men out there, women, after they do go home, they actually work. So it's, sometimes a block on the calendar.
Right.
So it's having that sensitivity to,
makes sense.
I think that's the point.
So to
Crazy
kind of,
hours.
I wanted to just kind of continue on a point that Nancy brought up, which is, so yes, the pipeline, everything kind of thins out all the way, right? And so if the number of people entering, the number of women entering is lower, it just thins out. So how do we increase the interest of girls in the field? And in some ways, like, I can think of lots of factors that make it more or less interesting, but what do you guys think?
Encouragement. So encourage, whether you're a girl or you're a boy, discover your passion, discover your talent. Don't be, afraid to try things. Don't hear people say, you're a girl, you shouldn't do this. If you're good at it, go for it.
Absolutely.
She probably, I think your perspective is important.
Yeah.
You're in the brain team.
I think stop self-criticizing.
Oh, true.
Yeah. And just give yourself a little bit more time. And even if it's slower than your peers, it's okay. You're learning, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I think to me, you feel, especially as you go higher up, right? You feel a lot of, you have to be open for rejection. I think women sometimes protect themselves from not being open to criticism and rejection. It does hurt us a little. But I think as from younger age, if you're like, it's okay, you make mistakes, people are going to call it out. You're not going to be spared for it. So, and it should be okay.
There was a hand. Are we waiting towards the end?
You have yes, we'll start questions in like 2 minutes.
Yes,
yeah. 1 minute maybe. Almost done. Yeah. So one thing
Yeah.
that I have an 11-year-old daughter, and one thing that I noticed is, during the time when I was doing distributed systems, I could never explain to her what I did. And I was simply not able to explain to her what I did. And now she believes that she understands what I do, because I can actually explain real world use cases that she can relate to, that are related to the field that I work in. And so one thing I've noticed about both her and her friends is that they get motivated by real problems.
Exactly.
And so one thing that I feel personally excited about is that I think AI can be motivating for young girls because they can see problems that they can solve, and they can be motivated by it, and then that in turn gets an interest in programming or interest in mathematics. I think it has a tremendous potential in that regard. So.
Yeah, I would say if you're an educator or you're a researcher, don't give Minecraft or whatever video game assignments to your students. Like, I don't care about video games. Like, give me something that actually solves a problem.
Exactly.
To your point. So if we can even change the curriculum a little bit to focus on real problems, so we go to video games.
Yep.
All the better.
One other quick perspective is, I think, like you were saying, the public schools are also aware that this is a gap that needs to start plugging in from elementary education onwards. I think there are already programs, right, where they focus on this. And I think, again, it may or may not make a huge impact, but I think it's there for people to start getting into this field early on. And obviously role models, right? I think, like Nisha, like she said, I think she's taking the time to explain it to her daughter, her friends, and they're hearing about it from different forums. And I think that's how we start building the overall engagement early on. So.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do as part of our effort is actually we engage with a lot of middle school and up. And we found that it's actually very, very encouraging to be able to show real problems to young people and get them motivated. So that's officially the end of our formal question session. I know people have been waiting eagerly for questions. Please, ask your questions.
So building on the last questions that we've had, how do we get more women in the pipeline, basically? So, I mean, I think it's pretty clear the the basis when you go back in education to get more encouragement in STEM. But I think that we're missing a gap for those that are later, like, I came up through a non-traditional, I'm a product manager, but yet here I am, I speak geek. I mean, my family legacy is pretty good, Apache Tomcat developer, you know, so, but yet, getting into these later, so I don't have the technical, that's the obvious leapfrog into this arena, but yet I think I have chops, as well as, but there's that gap in either the experience or in that promulgation of continuing with exploration.
Right.
So how, I mean, I feel it's a continuing problem when you do have that education or experience gap to fill those spots, even though you may, you know, all it takes is that someone believing in you to give you that opportunity. Because a lot of I mean, when you go into a job, it's all hands-on experience anyway. You bring a little bit to it, and then you figure it out when you get there.
True.
But you find that employers tend to cherry pick those they believe is more lateral into bringing the experience in. So I'm wondering how much you feel we've made leeway, like made progress into employers being more open to those candidates. Because again, opening up the diversity of the pool beyond those that are more academic to those that help bring in the more real world problems. Do you feel that we still have, like, is there more work to do there? Like, how far are we along?
I can take a stab at it. Absolutely, I think that's a very real problem, right? I think I know a lot of my peers and their spouses, and trying to get, male or female for that matter, right? Trying to get back to the work stream, and it is harder. And I think one thing that LinkedIn is focused, LinkedIn's mission is to make sure that every professional is connected with the economic opportunity. And part of it is trying to find ways to engage folks with non-traditional backgrounds, right? I think we have this program called REACH, wherein you apply, and here there is mostly requirement is grit and passion, right? I think a strong story about how you've overcome obstacles, and you demonstrate that given an opportunity, you will be able to get to where a traditional background engineer is, right? I think that program has been hugely successful, right? I have folks on my team who came part of that program, and I think there is an apprenticeship, an ongoing program. So please look it up. And LinkedIn is not the only company doing it. There's a whole lot of other companies as well who are putting it out there. Intuit has its own. I think even Google has its own program. But it's happening because we all know that there are more jobs than the qualified people out there. And we have to get creative in finding ways to connect the opportunity and the individuals.
So what I'm hearing you say is you feel like companies' eyes, they're opening their eyes to that untapped pool. So there's still work to be done, but they're starting with trying to have these programs to help others get involved. But I guess what I was looking for is, from your viewpoint, the philosophical. Do you feel like their mind is opening up because
I think I have a lot of preview into people who hire, right? I'm talking to people who are building their teams, and they're like, oh, it's a problem, we can't find enough people. Absolutely, because the end of the day for them, their job is at stake. So success for them, whatever it takes to be successful. And I tell you, a lot of them don't understand what they're building. It's so it is not like they are not picking a candidate because they won't meet the requirements, but they themselves don't know the requirements. So I think to fill the gap, it's really, bringing this other aspect, right? Like you can explain a problem better, or you can document a solution. I've seen people who document things so well that the entire product looks better than it actually is, or people who don't document things well and the product is a crap. So there are so many roles in there which is beyond the core of what they're trying to build. And you just have to figure out, like I was telling, there was my boss at one of the companies I worked for was a divorce lawyer. And the way he could explain technology to people he would just call me in 5 minutes before there is something new that's come up. I need the elevator pitch. And I'm like, okay, I'm giving him the 20-minute elevator pitch because, I speak technology. And he would like abstract 2 minutes out of it and just go present it to 20 board members. So it is really, what is your skill? Can you pick one of those to get into the project, whether it's a product manager, project manager, your QA, documentation. Then once they see your value, you're in. It's like entering the door. Once you're through the door.
Chicken egg.
Yeah, you are in. But I think if we go based off of the published list of jobs that are available, the same thing, BS computer science, MS computer science, Python, R,
Yeah, I know that stuff.
it's the same requirements. Actually, that's my...
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes, please.
I was thinking about how artificial intelligence right now is impacting baby boomers and Generation X. I know that, a lot of the decision makers, leaders, they're still baby boomers and Generation X, but outside of tech companies, I feel like, getting them, I know that you guys kind of talked about it, but getting them used to, automating processes, getting artificial intelligence outside of tech companies, how do you start convincing them? Because even like with my parents, I introduced them to Alexa a few weeks back, and they're baby boomers, but it took them a while to really understand how, it brings value to them, and now they love it. But it's like the same thing now with other companies, with other people. How do you get them to like the idea of artificial intelligence?
I think there is a commercial, like a consumer product, it's a different mindset. If you are making someone pay for it, it's an enterprise product, it's a different mindset. Right? Consumers, I don't really understand the consumer psych. It's, Instagram, whatever, that type. But I think from an enterprise point of view, it is all about, am I going to look good if I build this, whatever it is. It could be anything. And am I able to show some ROI? As long as you can show something, sometimes it's a PowerPoint presentation which just has some stuff. They will get convinced. It is surprising what things fly in companies.
From the enterprise point of view, there are so many companies we all witness the change. Technology changes so fast. It's a matter of you want to stay in business or you want to become irrelevant. So people need to realize that at some point.
Yeah. I think from a consumer side, the other side of the story, right? I think again, LinkedIn is mostly an open platform, and we thrive on, hey, how many people are coming? Are they engaged with us? And then there are other aspects, right? The first is the funnel, right? Are members showing up at our doorstep, and then are they staying once they show up, right? So I think the aspect of showing with data, when I say data, hey, is there a number that I can put out there, right, that is making a difference? For example, like we were talking about hardware, right? Hardware, like GPU compute that is necessary is easily like tens of thousands of dollars, just one piece of it, right? And it's a huge investment. Now, how do you justify an investment when you're planning to buy thousands of them, right? It's the direct business impact, right? Hey, by doing this XYZ, here is where we were from a metric standpoint and how much it has moved over a period of time. And now that I've proved myself, I'm okay to invest more into it, from any infrastructure, hardware, software, more engineers, what have you, right? It comes back to what she was mentioning earlier, right? I think there has to be a POC to demonstrate benefits, and then once people see it, it's like, yeah, you know what, this makes sense, and I'm willing to open up my, show up my pocket for more, right? You can take more from it. Doesn't matter.
I think a little example, I was at a big company, I went and learned, I took 2 weeks off, went and learned my stuff, and I went back and I sent an email to CTO, and I was surprisingly, in a big company, they were very willing to listen to me. I walked up to them, and he was like, this is really cool and I really like it, but we will never have an infrastructure to sustain doing anything in an organizational level. So they were like, I'll introduce you to threat detection team, I'll introduce you to other teams which will do it, but at least it opens up the door.
Yeah. So in the e-commerce business, there's always the A/B testing. Now there's more complicated testing, so you could prove value there.
Yes.
You develop
Yes.
a new AI technology.